Tennessee, David Toulis.
We pulled into the very crowded lot at M&R Motors in Rossville yesterday. Our glittering, amazing yellow Hummer chomping at the bit for movement and action, guzzling gas at a gallon a minute, it seems, coming to a halt there amid various people in a very, very crowded parking lot. And it seemed that once we pulled in, the only way to get out was to back out into a very narrow street with large ditches on either side, which is what we did. I was there on a sales call and enjoyed meeting members of the Gregg family. The car dealership is owned by Sharon Gregg and Ricky Gregg, and I have a very nice business card. The slogan at the car dealership is $500 down and no credit check. And this lot had sold a car to Avery Gray some time back, and then there had been a non-payment, and so the Greggs said, "Well, we're going to have to repossess this used Lexus," which it proceeded to do. And as you know the story, the car was repossessed in the middle of the city with a young woman, Avery Gray's daughter Kennedy, in the car. And the officer involved in that arrest and very fine treatment of this girl who had injuries on both arms afterward, and false charges laid against her by the officer who had not read his statute book in a while. That made a scandal with competing videos. The video of the daughter reaching 1.5 million views, and a very strong showing by the city. In its video, which last time I looked had about 35,000 views. M&R Motors had in its employ in some form the repo man. And the question that we have raised here on the David Toulis Show at 92.7 Nougat Radio is the actions of the officer Wright. And I do have his badge number, but it doesn't really matter for our purposes here as we review and have an overview of a small scandal between Mayor Andy Burke's office and members of the public. Now, I say Mayor Andy Burke's office because the police department is entirely his baby. It is an executive branch division, and Mayor Burke has executive power over that whole agency and sets policy. And the scandal is the arrest of the girl and the officer who was very testy, very impatient, and peremptory and executive in his way of dealing with this young woman. The number 800-8949, 800-8949. So in following through on my information, I said, well, let me find out more about this car dealership that sold the car to Avery Gray. And so I went there with my young colleague for the day or two, Jake Griffin, who's 16 years old. We went in. And I made what effectively was a sales call because I am, after all, in the radio business, and I provide amazing and wonderful service in advertising to small businesses like M&R Motors. And so I said, well, we have Sean Hannity, and he's number one talk show host in the country. And we have a 3-hour twaddle. I didn't use the word twaddle, thinking it might not be understood. So I said chit chat free newscast every morning. For 3 hours, starting at 6 o'clock with Russ and Val. Great program. And of course, I'm the local host. I promote local business, local economy, and just wanted to find out how you all are doing in your business and what can I do for you. And so we found out in a conversation that Officer Wright did not work there, though Avery Gray indicated that he had, according to her information. That's according to Mike Gregg. So this is, I guess, good to know. Because if there were, then you would have a problem with the officer having a moonlighting job for which he has an interest while wearing the uniform. So there's a conflict of interest question there. And we have asked this question of Rob Simmons, the PIO, the Public Information Officer for the police department, and he has not responded. Rob Simmons often does not respond to me, I guess because I'm not a member of the media. That's what the mayor said, whatever David Toulis may tell you, don't believe him. He is not a member of the media. So this is, and I'd like to take that as truth. I'm not. I'm, in fact, a member of the press, the free press, which is protected by the Bill of Rights and has I would say, a high standing legally as a you might say a conscience of the public, right? A conscience of even government. And this is David Toulis. And so, following up on this story yesterday with Jake Griffin and I, with my yellow Hummer, very glad to have a moment's rest in that very crowded parking lot where cars are sold very inexpensively to people who are without means, really. And so, very colorful. We walked into the trailer. There was a trailer with all kinds of faded signs on the walls inside, and very friendly, all-American, salt of the earth people behind desks and lolling about. And we had a nice chat. And my sales call, I hope, ended fruitfully. And I said, please call me if you think we can assist you. I scattered my business card about and had a very pleasant visit at M&R Motors. So Officer Wright does not work there. And so we just want to find out more. And so to find out more this morning, Marie Mott, the intrepid broadcast journalist here in Chattanooga, with a wonderful show every morning at 11 o'clock. She won't be on tomorrow, but Monday you'll be able to hear Marie again. She and I and Jake Griffin, age 16, went to find out more about this officer, to demand, under the open record statute, his personnel file. And we have a right to see that under the statute in person, walking into the building and asking to see the file. Okay, it is a file. For if you're a really young listener, you may not know what a file is, but often they're green and they have a little tab at the top, a little tab often colored, that have the name of the party or the name of the contents of that file. So it's a paper thing, kind of thick, with a steel rod on each side, and down inside you hold papers, right? And we were asking to see a file, a physical file that exists in the personnel office. So we went to, this was yesterday, to the internationalist styled building, which is the police department on Amnicola Highway. And I made a comment to Jake Griffin, my companion for the day, as a potential intern, that the style of that building is the internationalist style. And I said, well, that building, Jake, that style is very popular in the Eastern Bloc, the Red Bloc countries back in the 1950s and 60s, when that style was popular. All raw concrete, showing internal strength and power, right? These are buildings that show the power of the modern bureaucratic state. And the public library downtown is built in that style. And I also perceive that the police department is as well. So just that, by the way, a little architectural note there. So we went, duly impressed at the augustness of the modern state. We went in and asked for a copy of Officer Wright's personnel file, because we have a right to walk in and ask for it. And so you can see these little adventures on Facebook at Nooga Radio. And now the thing that I wanted to mention in passing is the misadventure in this morning of Marie Mott, who is trying to get to the bottom of this officer's history. And as Marie Mott pointed out to Phil Noblet in the city attorney's office and to the clerk in the personnel office, we have a right, she has a right, you have a right, an absolute right, to have that file presented to you. And if it needs to be redacted, well, as Marie points out, there is a thing called a Sharpie, and there is a complicated thing called a photocopier. If there is a thing that needs to be redacted because it's meaning chopped out because it's personal, well, go ahead and do that now, right? You take a moment. It takes no more than 5 minutes to go through the statute to show what is personal that cannot be revealed to the public. And so Marie Mott was effectively tossed from the Amnicola building yesterday, told we don't have the documents here. We went to the personnel office. I was running the camera for Marie and was told, well, no, we don't have those. We don't have personnel records here at the Human Resources Department on the second floor at the top of the stairs on the right. We don't have personnel records at the Human Resources office. You must go across the street to the city attorney's office in the in the annex, which is a dreadful, dreadful, dreary building, if there ever was one, which I'm told is the city is trying to sell on the open market. Well, as Chesterton says, an adventure is only an inconvenience rightly considered. An inconvenience is only an adventure wrongly considered. And I would say that the adventure that we had today was inconvenience galore, rightly considered, because it is a learning experience for all of us, for Jake Griffin, for Marie Mott, and for me, David Toulis, your host here on the David Toulis Show, 92.7 Nougat Radio, brought to you by Nuganomics.com. 800-8949, 800-8949 is the number. Nuganomics.com. So what did Phil Noblett, the city attorney, say? He said effectively that, well, the people who are involved in the record keeping and the open records service are not here. And Marie demanded to see Wade Hinton, the city attorney, about her request to see the document immediately. And the point that she makes in her narration of this little inconvenience is this: well, police officers are very peremptory, meaning very demanding, right? For instant obedience. You should see how many people on the right wing, if you will, complain about Avery Gray's daughter not instantly complying with the officer's demand to get her things together and get out of the car. Well, here's the officer shouldn't be doing that in the first place, but he's doing it illegally. And anyway, so she's getting her things together, and because she's not moving quickly enough, he launches what effectively is a physical attack on her extremities, pulling her out of the car from her extremities. Now, I know this story is not as big as the police rape story. Okay, I get that, but that story belongs to the fine writing staff, the reporting staff over at the Chattanooga Times Free Press, and they have that story. That's their story, and praise God that they are on the ball, running that story down. But we have here the Avery Gray arrest story and the Diana Watt drag from car story number 2. That was July 7. And an adventure is only an inconvenience rightly considered, Chesterton says, and an inconvenience is only an adventure wrongly considered. I don't want to see anything wrongly, but see an advantage in this. Phil Noblett pressed Marie Mott as to what is it that she wants and cannot she wait. And I don't remember exactly the questions, since I was trying to run my camera and was kind of not my phone camera, right? Not attending to the niceties of the back and forth. But you can see it all live on, well, not quite live, but with very much life in it still. A couple hours old now on Facebook. That's it. Nougat Radio 92.7 FM and 95.3 FM HD4. David Toulis here. I argue for local economy and the free market. Now, why is voting so poor? There's a story in the paper by the USA Today Network that came out yesterday, I believe it was, on the front page of the TFP, and it somehow doesn't quite get to what I'm looking for or really want to ask about it. It's Wednesday's edition, yesterday's edition, and what is there? Let me ask you, why do you think people don't vote anymore? Why, in your estimation, do we have in Tennessee a 28.5% turnout? Yeah, the number is 800-8949, 800-8949. And David Toulis is my name. I'm trying here to solve problems. I like to think of myself as a problem solver. Just don't violate the UPL statute, David. Just don't do that. And I'm being chastened by my reading of that law, giving me warning that I can help no one. Even as a Christian from a church such as North Shore Fellowship, I can help no one with their legal problems personally. I cannot prepare documents, I cannot represent, and so on and so on. There is a way around that statute to not offend it, but it is a bit of warning. So I am trying to help people with their problems, and sometimes the problems are legal, and sometimes just having a conversation with me gives people a sense of encouragement. And so we have a question here about the open records request. In a nutshell, a personnel record of an officer is open for inspection, right? You, my listener, and I want you to do this. I want you to do this. Just think about it. Go down to the city attorney's office and demand to see now the record of Officer Wright. I can just email me and I can text you his badge number if there's any question about which Officer Wright you're asking about. And if there are 3 or 4 of them, say, well, you want them all. You want to see all of the officer rights in the department. There are 500. I mean, there could be hundreds of them, because, well, dozens of them, because this is a very large, gigantic police department in Chattanooga, serving Mayor Andy Burke. We need the safety, right? We have to have a safety need. And we're going to ask about that in just a minute. Why do we have to need so much safety? And you have a right to the information. You don't have a right, however, to personal information such as SSN, his personal address, his cell phone number, his email address, his bank or his bank account number. These are things that are often part of a person's record, but they're personal. That's personal information. And you, the inquirer, the citizen asking to assert your right to know, don't have a right to that. But you do have a right to the actual record. And the record is his term of employment. How many complaints have been filed against him? How many times has the officer been written up? Did the boss ask him about his tattoos, right? Or did the man, to keep his job, not have to do a tattoo that he had submitted a picture for approval, that kind of thing. That's all part of the record of the personnel, the city employee, right? Remember, police officers are just city employees. That they're nothing more than that. And there's a case somewhere that I need to find on making that point. They are not a special guild. They're not a special safety priesthood. Okay, they're just common people like you. They have families like you. They're made of flesh and blood like you. They have souls, right? They're souls with bodies just like you, and they have a job to do. They have a calling. They have a profession. Many are very, very well-meaning people. David Roddy, the chief, lifetime Chattanoogan, loves Chattanooga, right? He loves Chattanooga just as Mayor Andy Burke does. Though, of course, Mayor Andy Burke wants to move on. He wants to move on to bigger things. And why is voting so minimal? Is there a short way of putting it? Is there a short way of putting this into view, this question about your duty as a listener to vote or not to vote? And the larger question, of course, is what voting does. Voting puts into office men who hold force. Voting puts into office men who have the lawful use of force, right? Biblically, under Romans 13, that's what voting does, to establish the judge who wields the sword, right? That's what the state is all about. The state, in our day, of course, having expanded well beyond its biblical warrant to include executive branches and legislative branches, right? The biblical warrant is that the state is merely the court. Look at the old Hebrew Republic. There was a leader, there was a Joshua and Moses, but the government was a series of courts, local courts, with Moses in the olden times making final decisions on hard cases. And so the government was a court, and there was not an executive government. We have executive government today. And so voting in our day is all about which executive face you want to have executing the will of the state against you or upon you. Now think about it. Why would you want to vote for district attorney? Is there any possible difference between one lawyer A and lawyer B as prosecutor? What they do is prosecute people under many of these are specious charges, specious statutes that are enforced against the people, and the DA is the man to do it. Well, does it really matter if you're simply altering faces on the executive state, the executive accusing, in a way, predatory modern democratic surveillance, warfare, welfare state? That's the state as it is, and people don't vote rationally. Not voting is not irrational. Not voting is in fact rational. Why is it rational? Well, perhaps we could say in short that God has withdrawn himself from the process because American Christians have rejected him in it. And American Christians have done that because they deny that God's law applies to the public realm. They have a privatized form of Christianity. And so voting in the whole population is not a big deal anymore. It doesn't mean anything because God's not in it. There's no moral issue in it. It's all just sort of technical. And if you vote for a federal representative, it doesn't matter whether it's Michelle or Chuck, right? Either way, they can't really affect policy, and they are just sort of brothers and sisters in the same system. They're not distinct. If one is elected, things will radically change than if the other one, but not if the other one is elected. That's not the result. There is not a way that really voting can change anything. Even though we have we have Trump and we have Obama in many ways. The machinery of the modern surveillance and regulatory state is unchanged, though Trump rightly has pared back many pernicious, burdensome rules and regulations and false claims of jurisdiction by various federal agencies. He has done that, and so that is very much to his credit. But in many other ways, the machinery is unchanged from one man to the other. People don't vote for rational reasons, and voting, voting for one judge or one commissioner over another is simply you're saying you want this guy to exert force and compulsion in society and in the economy over that one. And it doesn't seem like a very good use of your time to have to debate which one you want to be taxing you, fining you, oppressing you, regulating you, and checking up on your on your commode tank. David Tool, listening to Radio 92.7 FM. And now we're going to talk with Carol Gaddy.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
The GBI is trying to track down a missing person. Julianne Mosier from Danielsville, Georgia, went missing about a week ago. She left for Elberton but never arrived. She's reportedly driving a black 1994 Chevy